Hi there, welcome to the archive. So this week, I've been thinking a lot about the Arctic, specifically polar bears, and so I wanted to come back, especially because of this perfect timing, but I've been feeling called to Undrowned. I've shared this already. Undrowned, Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals, okay? And it's from Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs. And so this week I've been thinking a lot about the polar bear. And so I thought the polar bear is not mentioned because maybe it is. That's why I wanted to revisit it. And so today though, I thought, okay, let me just, I meditated and I asked, what do you want me, what lesson do I need today in this moment? Just to give you some background before I share this. So earlier today, I just did online mass before this. And then before that, I was listening to, see how I can't find it? This is exactly why I want to bring it up. 1 second, okay? Let me just find the resource I'm talking about. Because part of the video is talking about the duality. For me at least, part of my reflections is the duality of traditional religious institutions and African religious practices, traditional medicine. And so this morning, as I was working out, I listened to Courageous Conversations on Patriarchy, Misogyny, and the Sacred Feminine, Voices of Iwa, episode 55, from Iwa Lifestyle on YouTube. It was on my algorithms this morning, and I was like, oh, yes, let me go see. And so the episode, I'll read what it says. In this thought-provoking episode of Voices of Iwa, Iya Omisegun sits down with Olori Aya Oba Abi Oboni Aleyi Kumari. So you pronounce every single one. Okay, I hope I pronounce them right. That's an African name. We have like 10 names. Rotinala Watma Atakwajan Yebembe. Anyways, all to say, the names this is an African name. I love that. She's an elder. For a courageous conversation about patriarchy, misogyny, and the restoration of divine feminine balance within Ifa and African spiritual traditions. How does patriarchal bias show up in spiritual communities? Where does cultural tradition end and the interpretations begin? And how do we restore harmony between the divine masculine and divine feminine in Yoruba practice and diasporic Ifa spaces? Together, they examine how interpretation of Odu, I don't know Odu, to be honest, this is Odu, gatekeeping and sacred knowledge and the silencing of women's spiritual authority can create imbalance in spaces meant to foster healing and growth. This episode is not an attack on Ifa. It is a call for accountability, clarity, and alignment within African ancestral traditions. If you are committed to spiritual leadership, community healing, and honoring the sacred feminine within African spirituality, this conversation is essential listening. It is, and I found it really beautiful. And I learned a lot because, like I said, I don't practice Ifa. I'm not initiated. But I just be over like, what are you doing over there? Huh? You know, the curiosity piques. When I tried it, anyway, my entry point into this over a decade ago was like a hot mess because I didn't know what I was doing. It was just fire, right? I was embodying Shango at that time. For sure, at that period in my life, I felt like the daughter of Shango. I don't no longer associated with that. I'm more of a Oshun, and Yemaya called me more. But again, I don't like no cultural appropriation. I'm more interested in learning what the Ghanaians, the Akans were doing. But it's like very gate kept, and also I don't really go, and that's what the episode talked about, right? Dr. Kumari was basically saying you have to be thirsty for that hunger, for that knowledge. it's not the time yet, right? Or maybe it is and I'm being stubborn, but regardless to say is I listened to this conversation this morning, and then after that I also needed to do online mass because I saw a headline from Mark Carney, and he just stresses me out. Because, like, why is Mark Carney acting like the Iranian government is so much worse than the United States or the Israeli government, especially in this moment? It's just, again, I don't know all the politics behind it, but what I do know for sure is that we continue to act as though the American government and the Israeli government themselves together united have not engaged in terrorist attacks in so many different places all over the globe. That irked my spirit. So I had to do what I was familiar with as a Catholic. And I think part of it is also that Catholic guilt of like, ooh, she's dabbling in that demonic shit, right? Like that voice is still there. I just went to church. I didn't go to church. I did online mass. So after online mass, Undrowned, the Marine life, they were calling me, right? There's a lesson here. What lesson can I learn today? Because I felt like I needed a lesson. A couple of days ago, it was from the polar bear. I wrote a poem about the polar bear. Should I share that before I go in? They asked me to write about something that scares me a little, if I dare. So, dear polar bear, you came immediately to mind. You do brave things every day, at least to me you do. Living life above the northest of all north, in land so cold, desolate, and secluded. At first glance, you think I'd love it, away from the vast majority of insufferable humans. But then I remember, even though you don't interact with many of us, our impact is still felt by you daily, isn't it? We haven't touched you, but we've ruined you, haven't we? Almost extinct, you too have felt the colonizer's wrath. And you fight on, birthing black-skinned cubs I pray make it into the future, camouflaging in the snow, white fur undetectable from the rest of the landscape, paws reaching towards galaxies unknown, begging for humanity on the behalf of humans. I guess what I want to know is, how do you continue to go on forgiving? They tried to wipe you out too, and still, you greet the glacier so playfully, making peace with the narwhals who promise us that unicorns are real. Greeting the walrus with such grace. The seals blush at your presence, don't they? Surely, you all must be Sedna's favorite. Inuit mother of the sea, she cradles you in her bosom, don't she? May you never go there. Teach us how to survive, how to glide across the thin ice that threatens us all, melting hearts daily. So I wrote that on Tuesday, I think, yesterday, or Monday? What day is today? Today's Thursday. I wrote it on Tuesday. And I've been thinking about climate, chaos, catastrophe, how we see black people in the future. What does it look like? What does a polar bear tell us about surviving into the future? Learning that the polar bear is actually black. Whole time the polar bear was black. Has black skin. Its fur has 2 layers of transparent fur, which is why it looks white. And thinking about shape-shifting and camouflaging, fitting into your environment, disguise also, right? So today, after listening to that conversation, courageous conversations on patriarchy, misogyny, and sacred feminine, after going to mass, I was really interested. So usually I close my eyes and I say, take me to whatever page. I landed on page 123. I swear to God, I can't make this up. I landed on page 123 on the name Leviathan. Okay, I think I'm going to just read the whole section. It is short, but I wanted to just share today's lesson that I'm learning from this particular creature, which is interesting because the verse I landed on also weaves in Judeo-Christianity, and it's just really interesting, right? To me, nothing happens just because. I do the same thing with the Bible. It's just the same as picking a tarot card, which I also have here, right? And so that's usually what I'll do. If I just need some, I need some clarity today, right? Give me some clarity. Give me some clarity. gave me some clarity. And so the clarity I just got is Ace of Stones. This is the one I just pulled out just now. Okay? Ace of Stones. So you see the mountains there with the ancestors, the diamond at the top, the hand offering it, the clouds, the ladder, the woman or person walking up the ladder. So Ace of Stones. This was the clarity I just got just now. So I'm going to share the lesson from Marine Mammals. Again, Undrowned, the Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals. Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs. The contemporary sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is that how you say it? Physeter macrocephalus has an ancestor with the over-the-top literary name Leviathan melvili. Melvili? I don't know. Named backwards after the biblical sea monster and Herman Melville. This ancestor was known for its sharp teeth and massive size. In fact, paleontologists claim that they had the largest teeth of any animal ever, excluding tusks. At over a feet long. Could you imagine your tooth is 1 foot long? Wow. Debates are happening on the internet right now about who would win in a battle between this whale and the ancient megalodon shark that lived at the same time. They call this whale raptorial. Look at the root of the word, rape, monstrous, inherently violent. The name Leviathan, it says the paleontologists wanted to use the spelling Leviathan, like from the Bible, but it was already taken. So they used the Hebrew spelling. The name Leviathan has its own ancestors, derived from Lotan, an Ugaritic name for the fugitive serpent. As an adjective, the word means coiled or twisted. Like the way etymology moves forward and backwards. Like the way the Leviathan shows up in the Judeo-Christian text serving multiple functions, the main one being double-edged. What a great God that would create a Leviathan, but especially, what a great God that would destroy a Leviathan. As the book of Job tells us, surrender to God, or as Thomas Hobbes suggests in his book Leviathan, surrender and be governed by an absolute sovereign. I wonder too all the time this creation and destruction. I wonder too all the time about creation and destruction, the role of ancestral power, surrender and change. I wonder what happened 1 million of years for a being known for its sharp teeth to evolve into one whose teeth scientists now theorize are never used to chew, but are actually mechanisms that simply attune their echolocation. Wild. Is that possible? That what was made to puncture you could now be used to listen deeply. Is the sperm whale diving deep for ancestral elevation? Or was that always the function of their teeth? Did the sea monster stories bias the paleontologist? The way I look back is influenced by the stories I know now. And I do think that some of my ancestors were monsters. And I do still hold the power to create and destroy, if first in my imagination. And I thought my sharp critique was such a big deal once. How could I use it to cut through the obstacles in my path, to wound the self-righteous? Yes, I aspire to dominate in the world that oppresses me. But now I need antennae for a world I can't imagine. Now I need to listen more than I need to say this. But I do still need to say this. I surrender to a love so big it could face the knowledge monsters, to a love so deep and wide it could create oceans and whales, to an ancestral reach so long it could become us. And when they name us back, what will they say? What stories will they use? How great a love that could create all this. How will they name all of what we destroyed? What fugitive intentions will survive? Or would the planet sing again without us? I surrender to a love too big to name. And so that was the lesson I landed on today that I wanted to share. It's page 123, and the lesson was surrender. Yeah, surrender. That's a really good lesson for me today. Just surrender. And so I'm going to end on that note. This was a reading from Undrowned, Black Feminist Lessons in Marine Mammals, Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Again, I just pulled a random page. I landed on page 123, and it was on the sperm whale, and it was a lesson on how to surrender. The card I pulled was Ace of... what is it? I don't remember already. Ace of Pentacles? What did we get today? No, Ace of Pentacles, yeah. Ace of Pentacles. What is that about? And let's just quickly pull the Bible verse. So I just landed on John 11. Technically it's 20:32. But so I landed on, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Ooh, okay. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled, and he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, See how we loved him. But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if it would be done, if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee, and thou hast heard me. I knew that thou hearest me always, but I have said this on account of the people standing by, that they may believe that thou didst send me. When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with bandages, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to him, Unbind him and let him go. And so that was John 11. I read from 32 to 44. So basically today, the Bible lesson for me is on Lazarus and raising the dead. Raising the dead. So I'm going to end it there. Those are the lessons that I needed, I guess, today. I'm going to go do a reflection and a meditation and ask why I got the verses that I got. What are the lessons? How does it apply to my life? What does the Ace of Pentacles mean for me? What does this message on surrender mean for me? What does this message from the reading of John and Lazarus being risen from the dead? Why do I need to know this specifically on this day of March 5th, right? And that was also a poem I wrote this week on polar bears. So I'm thinking about polar bears, I'm thinking about marine mammals, specifically the Arctic. And that's something that scares me, right? If I do have fear, it's a fear of the future. And I think we could do better. We could do better by this earth. We could do better by all sorts of marine. They don't deserve to be seen as demonic when they probably can give us so much wisdom on how to survive. Because who knows better genocide than the polar bear, who's just minding its own business. Until next time, in solidarity.